tahu.
Suhu tinggi akan membuat planet bumi sakit parah.
Saya tidak mau melihat Indonesia emas dan anak-anak kita nanti
hidup sengsara dalam bumi yang panas ini.
Dengan perubahan cuaca yang ekstrim di mana-mana.
Polusi merajalela dan membunuh puluhan juta orang.
Hujan deras dan banjir di mana-mana.
Gunung es di Antartika terus mencair.
Air laut akan naik setinggi 1 meter.
Sumber air dunia akan berkurang dengan sangat drastis.
Banyak pulau yang akan tenggelam.
Semakin banyak spesies punah yang disebut the sixth extinction.
Keragaman hayati akan rusak, suhu air laut yang naik, ekosistem laut yang terancam, serta terumbu karang yang banyak mati.
Penyakit semakin banyak menyebar, termasuk malaria.
Stok pangan menurun banyak dan kekeringan di mana-mana.
Banyak tanah yang akan menjadi padang pasir tandus.
Dan konflik berbasis lingkungan yang meningkat juga secara drastis.
Semua ini akibat ulah manusia.
Namun, malapetaka ini dapat juga dicegah oleh manusia.
Karena itulah, ayo kita selamatkan Indonesia dari bumi panas.
Mari kita mulai mengurangi emisi gas rumah kaca Indonesia.
Ayo kita kurangi emisi gas rumah kaca 50% di tahun 2030.
Dan kita kurangi terus sampai akhirnya kita bisa mencapai nol emisi di tahun 2050.
ayo hijaukan ekonomi kita, jaga hutan kita.
Jaga ekosistem laut kita.
Kembangkan energi bersih dan kurangi segala emisi karbon dalam kehidupan kita.
Sehingga Indonesia Emas 2045 akan hidup dalam bumi yang nyaman, sehat, dan bahagia.
Sehingga Indonesia dapat menjadi bagian penting dalam solusi global perubahan iklim.
Planet bumi harus kita sembuhkan dari sekarang.
Target besar dan mulia ini bisa kita capai.
Ayo kita bergotong royong.
Selamatkan planet bumi.
Selamatkan umat manusia.
Selamatkan generasi kita dan generasi seterusnya.
Kita sambut Indonesia Emas yang penuh harapan.
Selamatkan Indonesia 2045.
Sadarkah Anda, kita mungkin adalah generasi terakhir yang bisa hidup dalam dunia bercuaca normal. Kita juga adalah satu-satunya generasi yang bisa menyelamatkan umat manusia dari bahaya bumi mendidih yang menanti kita selamanya di depan. Ayo kita penuhi panggilan planet bumi, panggilan umat manusia, dan panggilan sejarah. Ayo sebarkan pesan ini dan tanda tangani petisi.
Bayong.
Saya Krisdayanti.
Saya Kalista Iskandar.
Saya Reza Radian.
Saya Ciko Jericho.
Saya Chelsea Islan.
Saya Cinta Laura Kiel.
Saya Dian Sastrowardoyo.
Saya Wulan Guritno.
Saya Julia Stel.
Saya Yoshi Sudarso.
Saya sangat semangat menyongsong Indonesia Emas
100 tahunnya merdeka pada tahun
2045 nanti.
Kita semua di Indonesia bermimpi dan menginginkan agar bisa mencapai tujuan Indonesia Emas di tahun 2045.
Sungguh suatu capaian sejarah yang indah
Dan luar biasa dalam perjalanan bangsa kita.
Nggak kebayang betapa hebatnya Indonesia Emas nanti.
Insya Allah pada tahun 2045 saya akan mulai mewariskan Indonesia kepada putra-putri saya.
Di usia NKRI yang 100 tahun nanti,
Saya ingin kita semua hidup dalam Indonesia yang Pancasilais,
Yang modern,
Maju,
makmur,
sejahtera,
Hijau, adil, aman,
Bebas korupsi.
demokratis,
dan tentunya bersatu.
Tujuan tersebut bukan tanpa tantangan.
Ancaman terbesar di tahun 2045 bukanlah pandemi.
Bukan lagi kemiskinan atau kebodohan.
bukan separatisme,
bukan perang nuklir.
Bukan invasi militer dari luar.
Ancaman terbesar bangsa Indonesia
di tahun 2045 nanti,
the mother of all problems adalah
Pemanasan global.
di mana suhu bumi rata-rata akan naik
3-4 derajat Celcius.
Itu adalah suhu terpanas sepanjang sejarah manusia. Suhu terpanas di bumi kita yang sudah berusia 4,5 miliar tahun.
Suhu tinggi akan membuat planet bumi sakit parah.
saya tidak mau melihat Indonesia emas dan anak-anak kita nanti
Hidup sengsara dalam bumi yang panas ini.
dengan perubahan cuaca yang ekstrim di mana-mana.
polusi merajalela dan membunuh puluhan juta orang.
hujan deras dan banjir di mana-mana.
Gunung es di Antartika terus mencair.
Air laut akan naik setinggi 1 meter.
Sumber air dunia akan berkurang dengan sangat drastis.
Banyak pulau yang akan tenggelam.
Semakin banyak spesies punah yang disebut the sixth extinction.
Keragaman hayati akan rusak, suhu air laut yang naik, ekosistem laut yang terancam, serta terumbu karang yang banyak mati.
Penyakit semakin banyak menyebar, termasuk malaria.
Stok pangan menurun banyak dan kekeringan di mana-mana.
Banyak tanah yang akan menjadi padang pasir tandus.
dan konflik berbasis lingkungan yang meningkat juga secara drastis.
Semua ini akibat ulah manusia.
Namun, malapetaka ini dapat juga dicegah oleh manusia.
Karena itulah, ayo kita selamatkan Indonesia dari bumi panas.
Mari kita mulai mengurangi emisi gas rumah kaca Indonesia.
Ayo kita kurangi emisi gas rumah kaca 50% di tahun 2030.
Dan kita kurangi terus sampai akhirnya kita bisa mencapai 0 emisi di tahun 2050.
Ayo hijaukan ekonomi kita, jaga hutan kita.
Jaga ekosistem laut kita.
Kembangkan energi bersih dan kurangi segala emisi karbon dalam kehidupan kita.
Sehingga Indonesia Emas 2045 akan hidup dalam bumi yang nyaman, sehat, dan bahagia.
Sehingga Indonesia dapat menjadi bagian penting dalam solusi global perubahan iklim.
Planet bumi harus kita sembuhkan dari sekarang.
Target besar dan mulia ini bisa kita capai.
Ayo kita bergotong royong.
Selamatkan planet bumi.
Selamatkan umat manusia.
Selamatkan generasi kita dan generasi seterusnya.
Kita sambut Indonesia Emas yang penuh harapan.
Selamatkan Indonesia 2045.
Sadarkah Anda, kita mungkin adalah generasi terakhir yang bisa hidup dalam dunia bercuaca normal. Kita juga adalah satu-satunya generasi yang bisa menyelamatkan umat manusia dari bahaya bumi mendidih yang menanti kita selamanya di depan. Ayo kita penuhi panggilan planet bumi, panggilan umat manusia, dan panggilan sejarah. Ayo sebarkan pesan ini dan tanda tangani petisi.
Layong.
Saya Krisdayanti.
Saya Kalista Iskandar.
Saya Desa Radian.
Saya Ciko Jericho.
Saya Chelsea Islan.
Saya Cinta Laura Kiel.
Saya Dian Sastrowardoyo.
Saya Wulan Guritno.
Saya Julia Stel.
Saya Yoshi Sudarso.
Saya sangat semangat menyongsong Indonesia Emas
100 tahunnya merdeka pada tahun
2045 nanti.
Kita semua di Indonesia bermimpi dan menginginkan agar bisa mencapai tujuan Indonesia Emas di tahun 2045.
Sungguh suatu capaian sejarah yang indah
Dan luar biasa dalam perjalanan bangsa kita.
Nggak kebayang betapa hebatnya Indonesia Emas nanti.
Insya Allah pada tahun 2045 saya akan mulai mewariskan Indonesia kepada putra-putri saya.
Di usia NKRI yang 100 tahun nanti,
Saya ingin kita semua hidup dalam Indonesia yang Pancasilais,
Yang modern,
Maju,
makmur,
sejahtera,
Hijau, adil, aman,
Bebas korupsi.
demokratis,
dan tentunya bersatu.
Tujuan tersebut bukan tanpa tantangan.
Ancaman terbesar di tahun 2045 bukanlah pandemi.
Bukan lagi kemiskinan atau kebodohan.
bukan separatisme,
bukan perang nuklir.
Bukan invasi militer dari luar.
Ancaman terbesar bangsa Indonesia
di tahun 2045 nanti,
the mother of all problems adalah
Pemanasan global.
di mana suhu bumi rata-rata akan naik
3-4 derajat Celcius.
Itu adalah suhu terpanas sepanjang sejarah manusia. Suhu terpanas di bumi kita yang sudah berusia 4,5 miliar tahun.
Suhu tinggi akan membuat planet bumi sakit parah.
saya tidak mau melihat Indonesia emas dan anak-anak kita nanti
Hidup sengsara dalam bumi yang panas ini.
dengan perubahan cuaca yang ekstrim di mana-mana.
polusi merajalela dan membunuh puluhan juta orang.
hujan deras dan banjir di mana-mana.
Gunung es di Antartika terus mencair.
Air laut akan naik setinggi 1 meter.
Sumber air dunia akan berkurang dengan sangat drastis.
Banyak pulau yang akan tenggelam.
Semakin banyak spesies punah yang disebut the sixth extinction.
Keragaman hayati akan rusak, suhu air laut yang naik, ekosistem laut yang terancam, serta terumbu karang yang banyak mati.
Penyakit semakin banyak menyebar, termasuk malaria.
Stok pangan menurun banyak dan kekeringan di mana-mana.
Banyak tanah yang akan menjadi padang pasir tandus.
dan konflik berbasis lingkungan yang meningkat juga secara drastis.
Semua ini akibat ulah manusia.
Namun, malapetaka ini dapat juga dicegah oleh manusia.
Karena itulah, ayo kita selamatkan Indonesia dari bumi panas.
Mari kita mulai mengurangi emisi gas rumah kaca Indonesia.
Ayo kita kurangi emisi gas rumah kaca 50% di tahun 2030.
Dan kita kurangi terus sampai akhirnya kita bisa mencapai 0 emisi di tahun 2050.
ayo hijaukan ekonomi kita, jaga hutan kita.
Jaga ekosistem laut kita.
Kembangkan energi bersih dan kurangi segala emisi karbon dalam kehidupan kita.
Sehingga Indonesia Emas 2045 akan hidup dalam bumi yang nyaman, sehat, dan bahagia.
Sehingga Indonesia dapat menjadi bagian penting dalam solusi global perubahan iklim.
Planet bumi harus kita sembuhkan dari sekarang.
Target besar dan mulia ini bisa kita capai.
Ayo kita bergotong royong.
Selamatkan planet bumi.
Selamatkan umat manusia.
Selamatkan generasi kita dan generasi seterusnya.
Kita sambut Indonesia Emas yang penuh harapan.
Selamatkan Indonesia 2045.
Sadarkah Anda, kita mungkin adalah generasi terakhir yang bisa hidup dalam dunia bercuaca normal. Kita juga adalah satu-satunya generasi yang bisa menyelamatkan umat manusia dari bahaya bumi mendidih yang menanti kita selamanya di depan. Ayo kita penuhi panggilan planet bumi, panggilan umat manusia, dan panggilan sejarah. Ayo sebarkan pesan ini dan tanda tangani petisi.
gentlemen, excellencies, and distinguished guests. It is our pleasure to welcome you to the policy speech by President José Ramos-Horta, President of Timor-Leste.
My name is Ray.
And my name is Cindy, and we will be your masters of ceremony for today's event.
Before we start, we want to encourage all participants here to share your moments with us from this event by uploading them on your social media handles and tagging at FPC Indo.
Ladies and gentlemen, we invite everyone to please stand up and give a warm welcome to President José Ramos-Horta.
Welcome, President Ramos-Horta, along with the founder and chairman of Foreign Policy Committee of Indonesia, Nino Patijalal, and ministers of Timor-Leste.
We also want to give a warm welcome to all of our distinguished guests here with us today. We have people ranging from ministers, ambassadors, diplomats, celebrities, academics, students, paskibraka, and journalists. Welcome to everybody.
Everyone, please give a big round of applause. We would also like to thank Arta Graha Peduli and Arta Graha Network for supporting this event. Everyone, you may be seated.
Welcome, everybody. Foreign Policy Community of Indonesia is proud to host President José Ramos-Horta, who has been a very good friend of FPCI.
President Ramos-Horta, before we listen to your policy speech, FPCI has a welcoming treat for you. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the LSPR Choir.
Let's give a big round of applause, everybody.
Sometimes in our life, we all have pain, we all have sorrow.
But if we are wise, we know that there's always tomorrow.
Lean on me when you're not strong. I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on far. It won't be long, so I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. Please swallow your pride. If I have things you need to borrow for, no one can feel those for your needs that you won't let show. Just call on me, brother, when you need a hand. We all need somebody to lean on. Just might have a problem that you understand. We all need somebody to lean on. Lean on me when you're not strong. I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on. It won't be long, so I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. Call on me, brother, when you need a hand. We all need somebody to lean on. I just might have a problem that you understand. We all need somebody to lean on. If there is a road, there's a road to bear. You have to bear that you can carry.
Follow the road. I'll take the road.
If you just call me, 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 call me. It won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on, lean on me. Lean on, lean on, lean on me. Lean on, lean on, lean on me. Lean on, lean on, lean on me. I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. Somebody to lean on.
Please give a big round of applause to LSPR Choir. President Ramos-Horta, Jakarta welcomes you.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the policy speech by President José Ramos-Horta, President of the Democratic Republic of Timor-Leste. President Ramos-Horta's visit marks his first official state visit abroad since his return to presidency.
To begin today's event, we would like to invite Dr. Dino Patijalal as the founder and chairman of Foreign Policy Community of Indonesia to deliver his opening remarks. Dr. Dino, the podium is yours.
Good morning, everyone. Let's give all of us a big hand today. Bapak President José Ramos-Horta, welcome to Indonesia, and all the cabinet members, and also my mentor, Pak Hasan, Pak Dubes Okto, Pak Dubes dari Timor Leste, all the ambassadors who are here, all the students. Paski Braka, I'm so proud to see you here. It's going to be a great day and a great discussion. I see Pak Madi also, Pak Iwan, and all our ambassadors who are here, Pak Najib. Yeah. But before we begin the discussion, I want to get one issue out of the way. In the last 2 or 3 weeks, there was a lot of heat over a comment that FPCI, especially me, made about the Ukraine war. Yeah. I think 2 weeks ago, during the visit by President Jokowi to Russia, I said that President Putin was not interested in a peace mission and was only interested in continuing the war. And we received thousands of comments, yeah, and a lot of buzzers said a lot of nasty things, right? But I'm not fortunately or unfortunately, what we said, what we predicted, turned out to be true. You see what happens now. The war has intensified. There's not a single needle in the peace process moving forward by Indonesia or by anybody because President Putin is not interested. And the suffering and destruction in Ukraine has continued. Yeah. So that is the situation. But for us as FPCI, what is surprising is that the attack on what is really a normal academic analysis. And in our view, this is something new and a bit worrying because at FPCI, what we want to do is keep the space open for an intelligent, dynamic, and open discussions on foreign policy issues. And for the students here, the FPCI chapters from all over the place, I want you to know that it is very important to understand why FPCI stands with Ukraine. We stand with Ukraine because we stand for independence, we stand for sovereignty, we stand for democracy, we stand for human rights, we stand for rule of law, and we stand for democracy, right? It is for these reasons, forget all these strategic arguments, but it is for this reason that FPCI takes the stand that we do on Ukraine. So I need to get that out of the way, having said that, welcome, Pa José Ramos-Horta. I call him my president. I've had a long relationship with President Ramos-Horta. When I joined KMLU, we were in opposite sides. There were times that we debated, but then after the referendum in 1999, our relationship changed. We became friends, and we became close friends, family friends, and we developed a professional relationship. When I was special advisor on foreign policy for President Yudhoyono with Foreign Minister Pak Hassan Wirayuda, our first priority really was to fix our relations with Timor-Leste. We addressed many sensitive issues, including the human rights violations that took place around referendum and before that, and how we were able to resolve that in the midst of very complicated domestic political situation, right? And in all this time, I've noticed that Pa José Ramos-Horta is really an exceptional human being, right? There's a decency to the man, he's very consistent. He is a skillful politician, but beyond that, he is a wise statesman. He is very dedicated as a public servant. He has held many positions as president of Timor-Leste, as foreign minister, as, what else you got, prime minister, right? And in the last 10 years where you were retired, we were actually in the same club, right? We retired public servants, but he's held many positions. He was appointed by the UN Secretary General to help resolve the conflict in Guinea-Bissau, which he did very successfully. He's also a member of the humanitarian fraternity group, which was initiated by the Pope and also by the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar. He served as a member of the Commission on Drug Policy of the UN, and also a very active member of the Global Leadership Alliance, which is Club de Madrid. And in fact, yesterday we had a good discussion on that. So a very exceptional person. I think probably you are the only Southeast Asian leader who earns the title Nobel laureate. I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I think you're the only one who has that distinction. Timor-Leste has elected you as president, and we look forward to hearing from you, Mr. President. What are your thoughts on Timor-Leste, on Timor-Indonesia relations, on the region, and of course on the state of the world? I know you have a lot of concerns about how the world is evolving. So with that said, we are very happy to have you, my friend. This is going to be entertaining, but also educational. 90 minutes for all of us, and now I had the pleasure to invite Bapak President José Ramos-Horta to the stage to deliver his policy speech. Thank you.
I go here? I go straight, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Dino. Good morning, everyone, Excellencies. Allow me first to introduce to you our Foreign Minister, Madame Adalgisa, President of the Democratic Party of Timor-Leste, Mariano Savino, my chef de cabinet, Chief of Staff, former Education Minister, former Ambassador, and the Ambassador of Timor-Leste, Dr. Dionysio Babu, former Foreign Minister and Minister of Justice, now Head of International Relations in my office. And second row, Dr. Martinho Guzmão, Head of a unit in my office on human fraternity, follow-up to my work as a member of the jury of an international awards established by His Holiness the Pope and the Grand Imam Al-Azhar of Cairo. And Dulce, Dr. Dulce, former Minister of Education of Timor-Leste, and some with a mask I cannot recognize from here, and Dr. also, please. And last but not least, my grandson. Bruno, can you stand up?
Okay.
And so I hope I didn't miss any of my compatriots who might be here. Thank you, Dino, for again giving me this platform to share what might be my inconsequential views on global affairs, but allow me to start with a short sort of tour d'horizon of Timor-Leste, where we are 20 years after independence. I would summarize very quickly to say, in a very objective fashion, I probably take off, since I'm safely distant from you. It means I'm not afraid of catching COVID from you. I just don't want to share any potential COVID from me with you. So out of respect to others that I put the mask, but since I'm 3 meters away, and even though the droplets of COVID can float and actually can reach more, but I probably have been, I'm one of the most vaccinated person on earth. I did the 4th vaccine just a week ago, and I do self-testing very regularly. But here in Indonesia, like Singapore, Malaysia, you people love air conditioning. And I always suffer when I come to Indonesia, to Singapore, Malaysia, because the air conditioning is always 17 degrees. And so I get a bit sick over it. And I cannot forget my mentor, the former ambassador of Indonesia to Timor-Leste, Sitorus, is here. He's a Batak. And the current ambassador, also Sitorus. Thank you for both joining us. Hassan Ureyuda, also my mentor, together with, I have 2 best mentors here in Indonesia, Hassan and Dino. Thank you for the opportunity. So, Timor-Leste, 20 years after the restoration of independence, where we are, I cite some figures. On the political democracy front, and I quote Freedom House, The Economist, Timor-Leste is #1 functioning democracy in Southeast Asia. I would even say beyond Southeast Asia, you know, maybe only Korea and Japan might outdo Timor-Leste. Freedom of press, we are number 17 in more than 100 countries in the world that are researched by Reporters Without Borders. At independence, we had 20 medical doctors. Today, we have about 1,300 medical doctors. Most of them trained either in Cuba or in our medical school in Timor-Leste, mostly managed by Cuban professors, but also doctors trained in Indonesia, many in Australia, in India, Nepal, Fiji, etc. And one heart surgeon here, Dr. Andre, is here, trained in Indonesia and also in Portugal, specialization. Life expectancy before independence was below 60. Today, for women, 71.6. For men, 70-something. That's compared with some existing current ASEAN countries. We are 5 years above one of them, and we are about the same with another one. And we are only 20 years independent. It is an oasis of tranquility. We have zero political violence. We have zero ethnic-based or religious-based violence. We have multiple parties in the parliament, outside the parliament, even more. Common criminality also very low. Organized crime also non-existent, although I would acknowledge we don't have organized crime because generally we in Timor-Leste, we are disorganized, so our own criminals are not better organized than politicians. And either our police is very good or the criminals are very amateurish because they always get caught by the police. And so we are living in an oasis of tranquility in the midst of some extraordinary complex situations. Myanmar is one of them, right in the heart of Southeast Asia. I commend the leadership of Indonesia, Singapore, Malaysia, and all other ASEAN countries for trying to address these that right in the heart of ASEAN and challenge ASEAN centrality. A bit like Africans, I spend a lot of time with the UN in not only Guinea-Bissau, but to work in Guinea-Bissau, to resolve the conflict there, I had to work with literally everyone in West Africa, from Senegal to Cote d'Ivoire to Nigeria, and then with others extra regional powers like Angola, France, etc. And unlike these Africans say, you know, African problems, African solutions. Southeast Asian problems, ASEAN solutions. Easier said than done, and that's ideal. That's why we have regional organizations to prevent conflicts, and when conflicts occur, and obviously easy, you know, the speech on conflict prevention is a great, obviously a great desirable that we prevent conflict before they happen. But when they do happen, enter mediation, and that's the role of primary role is regional organizations. But whether in Southeast Asia, whether in the Middle East, whether in Africa, that has not always been the case. Local problems, regional solutions, not always the case. And that's not blaming anyone. You know, we could blame the EU and the permanent members of Security Council for dragging on the war in Syria, in Yemen, for the inability of our collective security system in preventing and resolving conflicts when they occur. More than 10 years ago, I gave a speech in Geneva at the Palais des Nations. I don't remember at the time, either I was in Guinea-Bissau as Under Secretary General, Special Rep, or in another position. And the other speaker was Martti Ahtisaari, former president of Finland. We had an audience of 700 people, and most questions came to me. And obviously, if I have as a companion another speaker like Martti Ahtisaari, who is a top professional diplomat, very Finnish, very Nordic, and not very exciting or excitable. And so people gave up trying to get answers from him. And because he's a consummate consummate. So most questions were actually addressed to me, and one question was on Syria. And I told the audience, that was 10 years ago or more. I said, I'm sorry, I'm not going to give you a cliche answer. I'm going to tell you what exactly I feel and is going to happen. I said, some conflicts will go on forever, non-stop. Many tens of thousands, 100,000 people will die. And only when all sides in a conflict are exhausted, then they will sue for peace. This is what happened in the Iraq-Iran war. 8 years, more than 1 million people died, and finally they sat down and resolved the conflict. But that was possible because there were two powerful leaders in each of those countries, Saddam Hussein in Iraq and Khamenei in Iran. So when the leaders decide we end the war, we end the war. In Syria, well, that's not the case. There are more than 100 armed conflicts, armed groups, and so many regional entities involved and extra-regional entities involved. I said, it's not going to end anytime soon. Well, 10 years later, still ongoing. Failure of our collective security system, the P5, or the whole Security Council, some directly involved, some indirectly involved, some supporting their factions in Syria and so on. And that is not the first time. Ukraine is not the first time that our collective security system failed. It failed in Syria, failed in Yemen, failing in Libya, etc. It doesn't mean I'm not dismissing the UN, quite the opposite. A UN that has been often mistreated, ignored, sidelined, but in the midst of all these tragedies, it is only the UN that managed to be present in Yemen, delivering, saving lives. It's only the UN that is, through its agencies, managed to be present in Afghanistan, in Syria, saving lives. Of course, with the goodwill of international donors that provide humanitarian aid. So there are aspects of the multilateral system that is still extremely, as the French would say, incontournable. No, you cannot ignore or go around it. That's where they are. But prevention of a conflict, which was Antonio Guterres, Secretary General, when he was first elected, he made as an absolute priority of his office mandate conflict prevention. In the process, he created a group called High-Level Board on Mediation. I had just finished my previous assignments. Of course, West Africa, Guinea-Bissau, I finished. Then Ban Ki-moon invited me to chair a panel called High-Level Panel on UN Peace Operations. I finished that. And I was asked by Antonio Guterres to join a group called High-Level Board on Mediation. And precisely because that was an absolute priority for Antonio Guterres. But again, easier said than done. Conflict prevention is the ideal strategy, ideal thinking, whether conflict prevention at community level to prevent conflicts from occurring and being exacerbated, and often conflicts are small, exacerbated when parties involved, local level, regional, or national level, dismissed because they say they are not terribly important. Then these conflicts gain more, simmer more, and then suddenly one day it exploded. Precisely because when there was a chance to address the roots of the tensions, many leaders, for different reasons, ignore, dismiss. I have observed it in many, many countries in our own country. So conflict prevention not only should occur not only at the level of UN headquarters or headquarters in Europe or in ASEAN. No, conflict prevention has to start mechanisms, arrangements with local authority, local leaders, and whatever they are. Local leaders are not only politicians, church leaders, community, traditional leaders, and so on. And then move on to at the national level. Address conflicts in community level, and then national level, and regional, obviously. But easier said than done. That's the nature of our world. And unfortunately, not much has changed after all the so-called lessons that we're supposed to have learned from history. Soon after World War II, we end up with the genocide in Cambodia. And then we didn't learn. We had Rwanda, where the UN failed miserably because in New York, and that was an abysmal failure of 3 people who were in key positions in Washington and 2 in New York. They failed to take prompt action in response to the Canadian general who was the chief of peacekeeping in Rwanda to increase, to strengthen UN presence. It was dismissed by New York and Washington. Genocide occurred. But in the midst of this situation, sometimes there are heroes. I visited Kigali a few years ago in my work as part of the panel on peace operations. And in the Genocide Museum in Kigali, you will see a great reference to a New Zealand ambassador. New Zealand was a member of the UN Security Council in '94 when the genocide took place. And it was that little country, New Zealand, far off in the Pacific, that raised its voice in the Security Council valiantly, trying to push the Security Council to take preventive measures by increasing the force in Rwanda. Well, he was not heard. But he is a hero in Rwanda. So in midst of this, there are great individuals. Syria, we had Kofi Annan first as special envoy of the Secretary General and the League of Arab States. He lasted only 3 months, he gave up and blamed unnamed powers that made it very difficult. Then came Lakhdar Brahimi, veteran Algerian diplomat. He lasted 3 years. Then he addressed Syrians through television and apologized for his inability to resolve the conflict, and it's still ongoing. In the midst of all of this, these tragedies, as if not enough, we had a pandemic. Okay. I have to say, I fully commend President Joko in going to Ukraine and Russia. If I'm not mistaken, he is the only leader so far who has been able to go to the 2 sides. And he has done what normally an intelligent third-party personality, I wouldn't want it to call mediator because I don't know whether Indonesia considers itself a mediator, but you try first some incremental measures that sometimes we call confidence-building measures, things that are easier to resolve than the root of the problem, and that is to facilitate the export of wheat and other products, food from Russia and Ukraine, because it is the action particularly of Russia, but also of NATO countries, because of the sanctions on Russia, the blockade of Ukraine that has caused this worldwide social humanitarian crisis. And in the midst of it, I saw in a small village in Timor-Leste how far Indonesia has become also a global economic player. I used to buy the bean oil. We consume at home, but I also buy regularly to give to some poor communities. And I used to buy for $4.60 for 5 liters. Well, soon after Indonesia was forced to stop the export, the next bean oil I bought, 5 liters, was $13, $14, $15. And it has gone down a bit, but not much, because people who got used to making such a huge profit, they had the taste of it, so now they are themselves playing and not lowering much more than below $11. And you see Pakistan, Bangladesh, all dependent on Indonesian oil. And then ironically, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, I remember reading Malaysia and Indonesia castigated by Western powers over palm oil. That is very detrimental. Well, maybe palm oil is very detrimental to environment, as is non-renewable energy like oil, coal, and all other minerals. So why you punish Indonesia for producing palm oil and not punishing everyone else who dig and export coal, for instance? And so Timor-Leste became a victim of this. Wars like World War II, we had no idea what was World War II. I was not born at that time, but I presume our people totally confused. What war is this that reached the shores of Timor-Leste? What wars are these that are created by the powers that be that fail to prevent the conflict in Ukraine? Whatever reasons we can explain, each side will have plenty of arguments to say why Russia felt necessary to invade and why the West has to support Ukraine. Whatever you say, the fact is we're all suffering on top of the COVID pandemic. And in the midst of all of this, all these years, I have not seen global leadership on, for instance, seriously addressing the consequence of pandemic and now the Ukraine war. And that is the death of countries around the world. First, we start with the LDCs, the first start with the fragile state, the G7 plus group of countries, extremely poor, many still in conflict, then the LDCs, least developed countries, and then the highly indebted countries. The only way for these countries to have a chance to recover from the pandemic and now exacerbated by Ukraine war is to have a global writing off of the debt. If we don't have the wisdom and the generosity, because it's a combination of wisdom and generosity and pragmatism, there is not going to be quick recovery. And now there are hundreds of millions of people thrown back into poverty, including tens of millions of children. Actually, a figure I saw last night was a bit like 300 million children who are no longer able to go into school. I'm not sure whether the figures are correct, but I had a glance of the statistic yesterday. Meeting with President Joko the other day, I delivered to him a letter co-signed by me with Gordon Brown and more than several hundred global personalities to plead with President Joko in his capacity as chairman of G20 to put high on the agenda the issue of child labor, child poverty, extreme poverty in the world. They are going to meet in Bali, and they cannot simply pretend that there are no millions of children that are suffering the consequences of the war in Ukraine and the consequences of the pandemic and so on. It's a moral, ethical challenge to the G20. And of course, I have the fullest confidence that the President Joko will try to mobilize the G20 countries, at least to do something. You cannot resolve, and I'm too mature, too aged to believe in rhetoric of resolving Ukraine, but at least show moral, ethical leadership by doing something concrete on child labor, child slavery, on extreme poverty. Right after that, launch some initiative like a new global Marshall Plan, focus on education, focus on poverty, etc. Because today, 60 years after World War II, there is much more liquidity, much more money in Asia, in the private hands, in foundations, universities, church groups, individuals, families, than ever. So it is possible that a combination of private sector, humanitarian, philanthropic organizations, families, rich families, that we do something that is moral. Focus on something specific, and that is child labor, child poverty, and extreme poverty across the world. I try so, therefore, to share with you the good news of my country, to which many of you present here so much contribute, and to thank ASEAN for the tremendous work done to assist us in the last 10 years for Timor-Leste to join. I told President Joko yesterday, please, on the 19th, please, I would like to see Timor-Leste joining ASEAN during Indonesian presidency. Of course, Indonesia, like many other countries, have been very supportive of Timor-Leste membership in ASEAN. We are part of Southeast Asia. We do not belong to any other regional organization. We have made tremendous progress in the last 10 years. But sometimes, as a human being, I feel frustrated, and I ask myself, it seems like the road to heaven, to reach the perfection of heaven, is easier than to reach the gates of ASEAN. It seems as if to reach ASEAN you have to fulfill all the criteria to enter heaven, and then the next step it is ASEAN. It seems to be more demanding than when Romania, Bulgaria, and all other Eastern European post-Soviet era countries joined the European Union. And so I hope that let us in ASEAN be part of ASEAN. And Hassan Uriuda is here, and many other Indonesian diplomats and others have seen what we have done in the last 10 years to prepare the country. For ourselves, we are not doing things only because of ASEAN, no. We're improving our economy. As I mentioned, the figures in every aspect, literally. We are more than ready to join ASEAN. I think I should stop here because I don't even check the time. I probably went beyond the time. Thank you, and God bless you all.
Thank you very much, Bapak President. And before I ask you some questions, I also want to recognize some people. Ibu Roro, our young, idealistic, and dynamic politician from Parliament, DPR. Please stand up for us to recognize you. She's also a climate champion. Yeah. And also a former president of Indonesian diaspora and now vice president of ASEAN Development Bank, Bapak Said Zaidansyah. Can you stand up so we recognize you? Thank you. Yeah. Pak Presiden, I wish you all the best in your bid to be a member of ASEAN. As you know, Pak Hassan Wirayuda and myself pushed very hard since 10, 12 years ago for East Timor to become a member of ASEAN. But of course, ASEAN is 10 countries. We have to get everybody to agree to it. And my question is this. Right now, globally, we are seeing a very intense great power rivalry. And relations between Russia and the West is permanently broken. China and the West is having serious issues. Russia-China is getting closer. India-China remains, challenging relationship and so on. And there are, of course, possibilities that these great power rivalries are being brought to our region, to ASEAN. And we are yet to see how ASEAN will respond to this. Of course, ASEAN must have a response. I'm just wondering, from your standpoint, how should ASEAN respond to this new geopolitical depression within our own region, of course?
Well, by judging from the way ASEAN is managing Myanmar, which should be the absolute priority of ASEAN, because Myanmar is terribly important, huge population in a very strategic location in Southeast Asia, and it is a big question mark, in a regional organization that otherwise is enormously respected, prestigious. I might be mistaken, but from my knowledge, it's the only regional organization where in its regular summits, all the global players in the world descend on the venue of the summit, whether it's Russia, Canada, Japan, South Korea, United States, Australia, the European Union, everybody, China, descend on the venue to meet with ASEAN leaders. The same does not happen with even the European Union, doesn't happen with African Union or the Organization for American States or the League of Arab States. So I can imagine that must be a huge frustration for ASEAN leaders having to deal with this extraordinary problem of Myanmar. Because Myanmar is not only the denial of a setback of democracy, but it's a huge humanitarian catastrophe. At least 800,000 or more people are in Bangladesh, and many hundreds of thousands in Thailand, in Malaysia and elsewhere, a bit more in Thailand. So it's a pressure on these countries have to deal with the complexities of the humanitarian situation. Having said that, of course, on the other hand, a country like Indonesia is 270 million, enormous success in the last 20 years, transition from the Suharto era to democracy. It has done extremely well, one of the most inclusive, embracing, tolerant, very diversified country, majority Muslim, but also very significant minorities of other religions, ethnic groups, and one of the greatest success of nation building anywhere in the world. And when I say Indonesia is very tolerant, it's not only like, sometimes we say the cliche, oh, the most tolerant Muslim country. I say, no, it is the most tolerant, one of the most tolerant period. Meaning, you compare with any other country, whatever that country is, Indonesia stands out as one of the most inclusive, one of the most tolerant. I have observed this over the years. So Indonesia might be able to play a role, yes, on the Ukraine situation. And many people might disagree. I completely agree with President Jokowi having gone to Moscow and Ukraine. He's the only leader, I think, who has done that. And if first steps are to release the millions of tons of food that are stuck in the ports and to safely go to their destinations, that is already a major achievement. And that might create, it might be part of confidence-building measures that the two sides might grab to scale back the situation. So I'm not an expert in any sort, but I took part in a Zoom 2-3 months ago, before the Ukraine war. Russia was already amassing troops around Ukraine. And I said, I don't think Putin will invade. He's playing brinkmanship. But I said also, the problem with brinkmanship is that if the other side doesn't blink, well, so the other side didn't blink, and Russia had a choice. Pull back and lose face, or take the next step. The next step is the abyss. So Putin, instead of backing down, invade. Catastrophe for Ukraine, for Europe, catastrophe for Russia. It's not only Russia doesn't come out. I'm not talking about consequence of sanctions. I'm talking about the fabric of the society, that Russia would invade another country, and after itself was destroyed during World War II. Russians fought heroic battles to free themselves from Germany and Nazi occupation, and then launched this cruel war on Ukraine. Well, it will affect the society, the people, the way they see life, the way they see Russia. You destroy your own soul, you wounded your own soul, your values, and so on. And so it will have a long-term consequence for Russian society.
Let me follow up on that point. And this is a question that I know the Indonesian government is trying to figure out, but the answer is not easy. We have two competing trends in international affairs. One is the world is becoming divided and locked in strategic contests and economic decoupling. So that's one trend. Yeah? But on the other hand, there is a need for global solutions to climate change, to the pandemic, to poverty, and so on, right? So how does a world that is divided and locked in strategic contests and economic decoupling create global cooperation? Does that mean we're now stuck in the next decade on countries growing apart? They grow, but they grow apart rather than grow together. Yeah. What is your answer to that?
Again, I don't like cliches, because or easy answers, sound bites. We talk all the time about dialogue. Yes, of course, everybody knows that. A great friend of mine, I don't mention his name because I have great respect for him, and he's a global figure, and he often says, there will be peace in the world if we all have inner peace. Well, if I were to say that myself in a meeting like this or with some people will say, well, so what? That's not exactly a profound statement. But said by that person, well, everybody, that is a profound statement. Well, yes, sure. You're going to tell the Taliban to have an inner peace, going to tell Al-Qaeda and to have an inner peace so that we stop all the extremism. The world as it has been all these centuries has been power, territorial conquest, prestige, credibility, of course sometimes survival of the country, And that's how it has been. And that's why we create global security mechanisms and hoping to, we operate all under international law that are very clearly defined. Because the architecture of international law is amazing, how over the centuries it has developed into this incredible details of for preservation of international peace and order. And when a permanent member of the Security Council, like Russia, invade a sovereign country, and then all hell breaks loose, and we don't know the end, and it's going to be escalating. And then we have the South China Sea. The law of the sea stipulates very clearly median line for coastal states that overlap in their respective EEZ, exclusive economic zone. Each of us entitled to 200 exclusive economic zone. When it overlaps, it's median line. Timor Leste and Australia, we had a dispute over the definition, the delimitation of maritime boundary, but the Australian side showed their statesmanship. They accepted a UN mediation, and through the wisdom of our leaders, particularly Mr. Shanano Guzman, who was the main leader, he was the leader of the negotiating team, and on the Australian side, led particularly by Foreign Minister at the time, Bishop, God, I forgot her first
Julie
name.
Bishop.
Julie Bishop, great lady. We reached in a record time an agreement, delimitation of the maritime boundary based on Timor claims, median line. Any solution to the South China Sea has to follow international law, and that is an adjustment, median line, and wherever even median line cannot work, well, you adjust for all the states claiming. And when China built military facilities in the South China Sea, obviously some countries that were used to freedom of navigation feel threatened, feel impeded. They also move in forces. So South China Sea, as a reaction to Chinese military presence in the South China Sea area, become militarized. And the more jet fighters move to the area, the more warships move to the area, the risks of accident, the tensions will increase. So that's one big problem. Apart from Ukraine, I would say South China Sea probably is more dangerous than North Korea situation. And precisely because there are too many claimants, and so you have all these situations that Asia face as a region. I hear often talk about 21st century, Asia century. Well, yes and no. When you have Asia has the most number of countries with nuclear weapons, not number of warheads, but number of countries with nuclear weapons. India, Pakistan, facing each other, India facing also China, and China probably also targeting any other country like Japan and so on. And you have North Korea, which is already a nuclear power. There is no illusion about that. And yet, in spite of, there is so much more liquidity, money, concentrated in Asia than anywhere in the world. And yet Asia has, if I'm not mistaken, 60% of world's poverty. Of course, because the region is big, 4 billion people, and that's where the largest concentration of poverty. And we have failed, even in Asia, to address climate change challenges, population pressure on water, on land, on forests, pollution resulting from our own industrialization. So Asia should have, if it wishes to be the 21st century, Asia should launch its own Asia Marshall Plan. Bring all the resources, the liquidity that so many people have in Asia, know-how, develop a master plan that has to be several tracks, including confidence-building measures to lower nuclear weapons, standing armies, and so on. Is it too much? Well, of course it's too much, but you have no other choice. The other choice is, well, one day, a nuclear accident. One day, two jet fighters fight each other over South China Sea. And who can do that? Well, academics, intellectuals can prepare all these studies and then submit to governments and help with the ideas. That's what I believe that's possible today with the wealth that exists in Asia.
My last question before we open up, and this is more historical perspective. You mentioned about President Jokowi's visit to see President Putin. I think in retrospect, I think one thing that he should have told President Putin is that, hey, Russia can learn a lot from Indonesia in terms of how Indonesia treated Timor-Leste, East Timor, because once East Timor separated from Indonesia after 1999, and it was very difficult and also a violent process. But after that, Indonesia treated Timor-Leste as equal, and with full respect to the territorial integrity of Timor-Leste. We had zero interest in political intervention, strong economic cooperation, and it is unthinkable for Indonesia now to invade Timor-Leste for any reason, right? If that were to happen, that would be just unthinkable, right? And yet, that's what is happening with Russia and Ukraine. So I guess my question to you, Bapak President, as a student of political scientists, I'm really amazed at how Indonesia and Timor-Leste, with such a difficult history of breakup, can establish relations that surprise everybody, right? And I think should be inspiring to other places with conflictual relations, right? So you and I and Pak Hassan were involved in this from the beginning. What is, you think, the secret of how that happened? A relationship with lots of potential for enmity, but becoming surprisingly a relation of a very close amity and good relationship that we have now, which is very rare among countries with conflictual histories.
It all boils down to leadership of the two sides. Beginning with B.J. Habibie, who, like Gorbachev or Freddie de Klerk in South Africa, there was a window of opportunity for not only for Timor, for Indonesia to change. And with the end of the Suharto era, of course, there are many possible outcomes. One outcome is even a harder line military takeover, as it happened in other situations, or seize opportunity. And it was admirable that he was a weak president in the sense, he was not elected and not a military person. But he had the courage, and but also it shows that in spite of all the problems of the Indonesian army, it still had, this mindset in respecting the orders of the political orders, even before the democracy. So, because if the Indonesian military would have said to Habibie, no, well, there's nothing we can do about it. And because the Indonesian military were not defeated in Timor-Leste. And in such situations like ours and elsewhere in many colonial conflicts, well, there was no military success for anyone. Everything ended up through negotiations, whether in Algeria with the French, whether in West Africa, East Africa with the French, the British, the Portuguese. There was no clear-cut military victory for anyone. The war could have been go on and on. So in Timor-Leste, Habibie decided democracy for Indonesia and resolve the Timor problem. I was in Atlanta at that time when Habibie here in Jakarta made an announcement about the referendum. I had many friends in CNN in Atlanta, and I don't remember how I ended up spending several days with friends in the CNN headquarters. And one of them came to me, said, José, come. The President of Indonesia is speaking. And that's when Habibie announced, he was in a meeting with Indonesian business people, and he said, by the end of this year, I want to resolve the problem of this East Timor thing. And he said, in very dismissive way, East Timor has only rocks, only problems. Let's get out. He said, too many rocks, only rocks. And sometimes when I travel in Timor, I see so many rocks. I say, Habibie actually is right. We have rocks everywhere. And he very pragmatic, and that's how he announced. And of course, he had very solid advisors, great people, great mind, like Dewi Anwar. Then came Gus Dur, absolutely great human being, and then Ibu Mega and all other Indonesian leaders. They showed statesmanship. As the French would say, they showed hauteur, a difficult word to find an exact translation in English, but they show a higher standing or whatever, in that you don't allow yourself to be constrained by pettiness, wanting to revenge, and so on. So Indonesian leaders and society accept the fact that Timor-Leste parted ways with Indonesia. It can be painful for the other side. But on the other hand, the Timorese side, led by Shanana was a guerrilla fighter, super charismatic individual, brilliant strategist, and as he himself said, he spent 8 years in the Sipinang University. And it was in Sipinang that he learned more about Indonesia. And he said at one point, I learned to love Indonesian people. And he became friends with many people, including, I don't mention the name, I don't know whether it could be embarrassing for Indonesians, because there was a famous banker who was in prison in Sipinang because hundreds of millions of dollars disappeared from his bank. And then he was put in prison. Shanana became a friend of his. One day Shanana was, he had a laptop. We even managed to smuggle a laptop, telephone into Shanana's cell. Then suddenly people came to inspect the prison. That particular gentleman knew that. He immediately went to Shanana's cell. He stood at the door, at the gate of Shanana's cell, chatting with Shanana, and then when the military people came, he chatted with them to give time to Shanana to hide the laptop.
That's interesting.
So that was told by extraordinary human relations developed.
I was Sanana's handler when he was in jail, so that guy was probably me.
Tribute to Indonesia for having behaved the way it has behaved with Timor-Leste. No temptation of revenge, because you can revenge many different ways. One is by indifference, by ignoring, by turning the back. You don't have to do anything actively harmful. And on the other hand, Timor-Leste also, we fought hard to prevent an international tribunal for Timor-Leste. And there was a lot of pressure. And I was the public face of arguing against it. In Timor-Leste, in our own parliament, I was foreign minister. And once I told in our parliament, when I was foreign minister, you people want an international tribunal? Yes, go find another foreign minister. This one is not going to do it. And you understand sentiments of people, but We understood the challenge and transition in Indonesia, and I often said so many times, more than 10 years, 20 years ago, I said in meetings with our NGOs, I have the fullest confidence in the Indonesian civil society. They will progress. And if there is going to be justice in the sense of prosecutorial justice, retributive justice instead of restorative justice, it will be Indonesians who will do it on their own clock, their own time, not our time, not the UN, not the US.
Yeah.
And Indonesia has changed beyond recognition. And exactly as I said, I have the fullest confidence. So Indonesia has been extraordinarily generous to Timor-Leste. One thing that doesn't enter into the reports on aid is from day one, even before independence in 2000, the then President Gus Dur wrote Indonesian universities, encouraged them, pleading with them, to let Timorese studying Indonesians pay local fee, not foreign student fee. It would be impossible for Timorese at the time. With these, thousands of Timorese gained access to Indonesian universities. So if you calculate this, and many Timorese students, many of our leaders today, they study Indonesia. Mariano Sabino, you can stand up, Mariano. Mariano is one of the youngest Timorese leaders. I used to say that he is very articulate. He speaks like Bun Karno used to speak. And
I think were you a protester at the embassy where I was the diplomat? Oh, that's me.
Yeah. But instead of studying, studying, getting a PhD, he spent more time organizing protests.
Yeah.
And but he did finish his degree. Dionisio Babu studied in Udayana in Bali, law, and then later went to do PhD at ANU. Benedito Freitas, our minister, almost everyone sitting here studied at some point in Indonesia, and there are many thousands more. I think minister also, no? You studied here and in New Zealand. Yeah. So we have these incredible connections, and if you look at the data, the statistics of Timorese entering Indonesia, I couldn't believe when Ambassador Sitorus, for the first time, he gave me the data. Timorese entering Indonesia every month. Remember, we have population 1.3 million. More than 100,000 enter Indonesia every month. I couldn't believe the figure. We are number 4 in terms of countries, visitors coming to Indonesia. Below, compared with China, Turkey, and others. So, and that shows the extraordinary connectivity, connection, emotional, and...
Bapak President, for the benefit of the young leaders, the best students who, raised the flags during independence, just for them to hear, after 23 years of a violent and difficult breakup, is there anyone today in Timor-Leste that shows hatred towards Indonesia?
Many thousands of Indonesian citizens living in Timor-Leste, people who came after independence, some have been there before, they returned. And Timorese also do not suffer any mistreatment or any abuse in Indonesia. And I have to say, our young people, particularly being young, particularly our people, sometimes they think they are too smart and let their passport expire and then overstay in Indonesia. Usually Indonesian immigration very rough with any other nationality. With the Timorese, they often just let them through. No punishment, no... and that's some Timorese, they tell us. If you tell your Timorese, they'll just let you through. And I know specific cases, specific situations. One young Timorese, I know her well. She was studying here in Jakarta, music. She allowed her passport, a visa to expire, I don't know how many years, then called me, pleading with me for $4,000 to pay the fine. I said, listen, I'm not going to give you $4,000 to pay any fine. But then she went to the police and she managed to talk into them letting her leave the country. That was just around COVID time. So there has been these individual examples of how Indonesians are very tolerant towards naughty Timorese.
Okay. Thank you. Let me just take some questions now. I'm going to take 3 questions. I hear there's one from Paski Braka. Can you raise your hand? Oh, okay. Please get up and say your name. And also, I'm told about area, somebody from area. Okay, please get ready. And then somebody from FPCI chapter, President University. Okay, if you don't mind just coming to the front near the microphone. Yeah. Udah ada di sana. Okay, all right, please. And after that, if there's a question from the media or the audience, most welcome. Go ahead, please. Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. Hola, colegas Ramos-Horta. First of all, thank you so much for the opportunity. I would like to introduce myself. I'm Intan Felicia Putri, as well known as Intan. I'm 16 years old, and I'm from Paski Braka. Mr. President, as we all know, Timor-Leste is a country that is geographically located in Southeast Asia region, but has not joined ASEAN until now. Then what are the efforts made by Timor-Leste to become a member of ASEAN? Thank you.
Thank you. Area? In the middle? Yes.
Excellency, so you have already mentioned Timor-Leste's potential membership of ASEAN, and there is anticipation that perhaps next year Timor-Leste will be admitted into ASEAN. Beyond the important sense of belonging to the regional community that will bring, what benefits have you identified as being a member of ASEAN? Thank you.
Okay, President University, and then if any media want to ask after President University, please just raise your hand, yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, so good afternoon, and first of all, it is a great honor and pleasure for us to have this opportunity to be here today. And my name is Tiara Aurelia Putri from FPCI Chapter President University. And here I have 2 questions based on Mr. President.
Do you mind just one question, please? Yeah,
okay, just one question. Okay, so seeing Timor-Leste momentum in the world of economy and also the state relations, there is a possible change that Timor-Leste could join ASEAN. So my question is, with Timor-Leste being the newest member with a new perspective, what is Timor-Leste, or maybe Mr. President Ramos-Horta view on the ASEAN principle of non-interference? I think that's all for me. Thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, anyone from Esther, by the way, prepared that picture. I want to ask a question about that. Anyone from the media? Nobody from media? Yes, please.
Thanks for the opportunity. I'm Eno from National Radio of Indonesia. My question for Mr. President, do you have any insight about Indonesian presidency in G20? Thank you.
Okay, and then can you post that picture? I want to ask a question about that. Esther, you got it? Can you post it now? My question, what happened to that hair?
Where is it? Oh, God.
Okay. You can answer it last, yeah.
Embarrassing.
Please.
Please remind me about the first question.
The first question is about East Timor's bid to membership in ASEAN. What is the update on that? Yeah.
Yeah.
When do you think that's going to happen? Yeah.
Well, there have been some ASEAN mission to Timor-Leste, I think at least 3 or 4 missions. Two occur in the month of July, covering all three pillars. And from our informal understanding, because obviously the reports are for the head of states, governments of ASEAN, not to share with the public, but from our understanding, obviously they are very impressed with the efforts and achievements made by Timor-Leste. And I would suspect that their recommendation would be to ASEAN leaders that Timor-Leste should join ASEAN now. So that's what I expect. Many countries that I have met with over the years, whether Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, Philippines, and of course not to mention Indonesia, Brunei, His Majesty Sultan, one of the earliest supporters of Timor-Leste, they all say, why not Timor-Leste join now? Some countries even advocated that ASEAN should let Timor-Leste now, that was 10 years ago, and then have a 5-year, 10-year program to support Timor-Leste to catch up with the rest of ASEAN. So I think the European Union, they do that also with some of the new applicants. You know, there are very strict conditions to join the European Union, but there are also situations of exceptions in some areas. So why not this? What we'd like to see is that Timor-Leste finally join ASEAN during Indonesian presidency. It will be the culmination of this great history, this great journey between Timor-Leste and Indonesia. In this region that we mentioned, with problems of Myanmar unresolved, Timor-Leste membership in ASEAN would show how ASEAN, Indonesia, have progress in such a way that as a group, collectively have helped a country post-conflict to emerge from past conflict to be a member of ASEAN. It would be a festival of success, you know, for Indonesia presidency, for ASEAN. Pardon.
The second question was what would be the benefits for East Timor, for Timor-Leste if it joins ASEAN?
We would be part of a regional economy of about 700 million people, over $4 trillion joint GDP. And in anticipation of Timor-Leste joining ASEAN, we have already a long list of potential investors from China, from Korea, Europe, UK, Germany, pharmaceutical companies from Europe, medical industries, particularly in view of the breakdown of supply chain, you know, that is obvious with COVID and now the war in Ukraine. Many countries are looking how to position themselves in, they don't want to go to, they live in China, some live in China, but they don't want to leave Asia. So they're looking for space. And Timor-Leste is virgin territory. And we opt for free trade. Timor-Leste, at least I completely support free trade with any country. The tariffs and all of these are, and my view, it's you create layers of bureaucracy that constitute an impediment to look at Mexico, the way Mexico progressed after NAFTA. That's why Donald Trump didn't like NAFTA. He ordered the review of NAFTA. I knew Mexico before they joined NAFTA, during, and since, how it has changed for benefit of Mexico. And so free trade, there are problems, obviously. Nothing is free, nothing is, not everything is rosy, but so Timor-Leste would benefit tremendously from this gigantic $700 million economy. and with free trade agreements with Australia, Japan, Korea, China, and now I think ASEAN negotiating with the European Union. So there are already interest. People wanting to make our second international airport, Baucau Airport, which are being refurbished by the United States, into an air cargo hub, aircraft maintenance hub. So there are plenty of opportunities as we join. Not joining ASEAN, outside ASEAN, we are 1.3 million. But of course, if we fail to join ASEAN, for some reason, we are eligible for heaven, but not for ASEAN, well, there are countries beyond ASEAN. There is Australia, there is New Zealand, there is the United States, the European Union, and there is China. China would completely embrace Timor-Leste. And some Australian media keep talking about Chinese influence in Timor-Leste. I have to tell, I often have said that, we in Timor-Leste, we are the ones who are very worried about Chinese influence in Australia. Too much Chinese influence in Australia. So people should be worried with Chinese influence in Australia and not worried about Chinese influence in Timor-Leste. Chinese are buying anything, everything in Australia. We don't have even loans with China. We're one of the few countries in the world, zero loan with China. We have with ADB, and I think IFC, but basically that.
Okay. And from a question on G20, what do you think about Indonesia's presidency of G20 from the journalist?
G20?
Yeah.
It is a great challenge, great opportunity for President Jokowi to exercise, to show his leadership. It can be a great golden moment for the president. As we know, never before, at least in recent years, there are G20, of course G20 is recent, but of any international institution that with such dramatic challenges. And I personally deliver 2 or 3 letters to President Jokowi. Besides Timor-Leste bilateral interest with Indonesia, I deliver a letter myself and Gordon Brown and more than 100 leaders dealing with the fallout of Ukraine, COVID, another letter from the G7 fragile states, addressed also to President Jokowi, pleading with him not to allow issues that pertain to third world countries, particularly the fragile states, to be forgotten in the agenda of G20. And I believe a country like Indonesia, in the third world, you have India, you have Indonesia, you have Brazil, some of the more influential countries. With Indonesia leadership of G20, it's natural that President Jokowi will be a forceful advocate of our agendas. And I believe the other leaders will not be too much convincing because, all are very sensitive people. I have the greatest respect for every country in the G20. Each of them, many of them have different challenges over the years, different experience, traumatic experience in their own country, in the region. So I don't think it is, I'm not referring to Ukraine, that G20 is going to resolve that, but beyond the Ukraine war and then the fallout of the Ukraine tragedy, there are issues that I think they can do. Write off the debt of third world countries. Or some, at least, for the fragile states, for the LDCs, write off completely. Everyone write off. Then for other third world countries, highly indebted countries, negotiate a restructure of the debt. That's the only way for us to have a chance, for the indebted countries to have a chance to recover their economy. Invest more on education for children and youth employment and so on. Because There is money in the world. When the Ukraine war happened, within a matter of days, the European Union managed to find $12 billion for Ukraine. That is almost the total amount of international aid for ODA. Of course, I know it's much more than that. So there is possibility for a concerted action that is not Western-led, but G20-led, which is a combination of Western countries and the third world countries. So I believe President Jokowi is able to, his personality, his background, Indonesia's weight, I believe.
Thank you. And I think the third question was also answered by President Ramos-Horta. We're now going to a little fun part of the session, which is a quiz. We're going to have 3 or 4 questions, quiz, and you will pick of all people who will answer which one should answer. And the prize is a photo hug with you and me. So he or she will come up and right. So it's not very easy to get. Yeah. All right. First question. 2 Timor-Leste nationals won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1996. Who were the 2 people? A. José Ramos-Horta and Xanana Gusmão. B. Xanana Gusmão and Carlos Felipe Ximénez. C. José Ramos-Horta and Nicolau dos Reis Lobato. And D. José Ramos-Horta and Carlos Felipe Ximénez Bello. You can pick
to decide?
Decide who will answer.
To answer? Anyone in the audience?
Okay, I'll pick that one first. The guy down.
I don't want to embarrass some friends
All
here.
right, go ahead.
Rosa, Dr. Rosa. Dr. Rosa is a famous dentist.
Go ahead.
Okay, so the answer I'll say is the D one, Joe Ramos-Horta and Carlos Felipe Ximénez.
All right, good. Okay, question number 2. And I'm sorry to say this, I hope you don't mind. In what year was there an assassination attempt at José Ramos-Horta? A, 1997, B, 2002, C, 2008, and D, 2012. Okay, the lady in the yellow jacket, please. Yes. Go ahead. You didn't just Google this, right? Okay. C, 2008, is that correct? Okay, congratulations. Third question, what are the 2 official languages of Timor-Leste? A, Tetum and Portuguese, B, Bahasa Indonesia and English, C, Tetum and English, D, Bahasa Indonesia and Portuguese.
You have many there.
All right, go. Yes.
It's A, Tetum and Portuguese.
Tetum and Portuguese.
All right, correct. All right. All right.
But can I clarify?
Yeah, please.
We do have 2 official languages, Tetum and Portuguese, but also 2 working languages in the Constitution, Bahasa Indonesia and English.
Okay. All right. Well done. Thank you. The 4th question, we have the 4th question. It's not up there. President Ramos-Horta, I don't know who gave this question, but I have to read it if you don't mind. President Ramos-Horta has nice teeth. Who is President Ramos-Horta's most favorite dentist? A, Dr. Vincent Piquet from Amsterdam. B, Dr. Penny Williams from Perth. And C, Dr. Rosa Jalal from Jakarta. Anyone want to answer that? Yes.
The answer is C, Dr. Rosa.
C, he says, Dr. Rosa Jalal.
That's correct. But can I clarify?
Please, please.
Yeah. I don't like dentists. I'm always completely stressed out. And when I come to Jakarta, even when I don't need to see a dentist, I go and see Dr. Rosa because she is so beautiful. And so I make up stories about my teeth so that I spend more time there.
Thank you for that very honest answer. Okay.
Congratulations to all the winners. We invite you to the stage to claim your prize, which
One-
is a picture with the president
One by
himself.
one.
Yes.
Di tengah, silakan. Mana ini ambil?
The cameraman is ready.
Ada yang ambil aja kalau gitu. This is supposed to be family picture, so like this.
Yes. Okay, 1, 2.
Oh, does somebody have a mask for me? Oh, okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Next
Next.
winner can
Thank
come
you.
up to the stage to take your picture.
Maybe we can turn on the light a little bit.
Di tengah.
Thank you.
All right, this one I can hug, right? This is supposed to be a family hug picture. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next winner can come up to the stage.
Thank you. Terakhir. Thank you. Terima kasih. Thank you. Thank you.
Once again, congratulations to all the winners. You may head back to your seats.
Now, on behalf of FPCI, we would like to present President Ramos-Horta with our token of appreciations and proceeds with the gift exchange.
This is a gift from FPCI. You can open it.
Well, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll leave it here.
We'll take it. Thank you.
Thank you.
And President Ramos-Horta also has a gift to FPCI.
A book on Mr. Shanana. This is a copy of the Declaration on Human Fraternity that was drafted, signed by His Holiness the Pope and the Grand Imam, Al-Azhar, Cairo. There is an international award created in 2019, and there was a jury, and I was a member of the second jury, and I, like other members, we made a commitment with His Holiness and Grand Imam to continue to promote the Declaration of Human Fraternity. In Timor-Leste, our parliament already passed a resolution unanimously adopting the Human Fraternity Declaration as a national document. And then eventually it will be adopted into school curriculum.
Thank you very much.
That's right. And the other, Thais is Timorese. Recently, it got the UNESCO recognition as foreign minister.
Intangible
heritage of humanity. Yeah.
Congratulations.
So, by Timorese Thais, is going to be very expensive in the future. So,
thank you.
You have a chance to buy now.
Thank you very much. Thank you
Everybody,
very much.
please give a big round of applause. And thank you, President Ramos-Horta and Pak Dino.
Now, in FPCI's tradition, we always do an Indonesian-style pantun, or a traditional poem for all of our foreign friends. Now, on this occasion, our FPCI chapter students from all over Indonesia have a parting gift for you, Mr. President, that they would like to share. Please enjoy.
Awesome.
Jalan-jalan ke Kota Dili.
Cicipi kuliner lokal, namanya tukir.
Timur Leste seperti keluarga sendiri.
Mantap. Persaudaraan semoga erat terukir.
Noble Lord, indeed he is.
Brings joy to everyone he meets.
A brave man coming from the east. Working day and night to establish peace.
Presiden Timor Leste, Ramos-Horta. Cakep.
Dengan kacamata hitam, dia naik Vespa.
Cakep.
Terima kasih atas kunjungannya.
Obrigada dan sampai jumpa.
Luar biasa.
Wow, what a creative pantun. Thank you, FPCI University chapters, for a great conclusions to today's event.
We would like to once again thank President José Ramos-Horta for your time, and with that, we invite everyone to please stand up and send off Mr. President with a big round of applause.
Thank you ya, terima kasih.
Thank you.
Let's give a big round of applause, everybody.
Dubes Prancis.
Merci, merci Dato' ini, merci.
Ini ambassadors from Germany, from
You are part of our basketball team. He's going to move to Timor. We are hiring him to be a basketball player. Pleasure. Hello, how are you? Thank you. Pleasure. Thank you. Pleasure. How are you? Thank you.
big hand for Christine Hakim, everyone.
Thank you for coming. Thank you.
Okay, we would like to once again thank President José Ramos-Horta for your time. Ladies and gentlemen, you may be seated now.
Ladies and gentlemen, we invite you to return to your seats.
And you may be seated. Thank you. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we would like to thank all the distinguished guests and participants who came here today. Thank you to all the ministers, members of parliament, ambassadors, diplomatic corps, celebrities, paskibraka, and media who have joined today's event.
We would also like to give a big thank you to Artagraha Peduli and Artagraha Network for supporting this event. We hope today's event has provided valuable insight for both Indonesia and Timor-Leste for the better of our two countries' relations.
Please don't forget to share your moments with us from this event by tagging @FPC Once again, don't forget to share your moments with us by tagging @FPC on your social media handles. And stay updated with our latest events by following our Instagram and Twitter @FPC and YouTube page @SecretariatFPCI. Thank you, and we'll see you in our next event.
Tambayong.
Saya Krisdayanti.
Saya Kalista Iskandar.
Saya Desa Radian.
Saya Ciko Jericho.
Saya Chelsea Islan.
Saya Cinta Laura Kiel.
Saya Dian Sastrowardoyo.
Saya Wulan Guritno.
Saya Julia Stel.
Saya Yoshi Sudarso.
Saya sangat semangat menyongsong Indonesia Emas
100 tahunnya merdeka pada tahun
2045 nanti.
Kita semua di Indonesia bermimpi dan menginginkan agar bisa mencapai tujuan Indonesia Emas di tahun 2045.
Sungguh suatu capaian sejarah yang indah
dan luar biasa dalam perjalanan bangsa kita.
Nggak kebayang betapa hebatnya Indonesia Emas nanti.
Insya Allah pada tahun 2045 saya akan mulai mewariskan Indonesia kepada putra-putri saya.
Di usia NKRI yang 100 tahun nanti,
saya ingin kita semua hidup dalam Indonesia yang Pancasilais,
yang modern,
maju,
makmur,
sejahtera,
hijau, adil, aman,
bebas korupsi,
demokratis,
dan tentunya bersatu.
Tujuan tersebut bukan tanpa tantangan.
Ancaman terbesar di tahun 2045 bukanlah pandemi.
Bukan lagi kemiskinan atau kebodohan.
Bukan separatisme.
Bukan perang nuklir.
Bukan invasi militer dari luar.
Ancaman terbesar bangsa Indonesia
di tahun 2045 nanti,
the mother of all problems adalah
pemanasan global,
di mana suhu bumi rata-rata akan naik
3-4 derajat Celcius.
Itu adalah suhu terpanas sepanjang sejarah manusia. Suhu terpanas di bumi kita yang sudah berusia 4,5 miliar tahun.
Suhu tinggi akan membuat planet bumi sakit parah.
Saya tidak mau melihat Indonesia Emas dan anak-anak kita nanti
hidup sengsara dalam bumi yang panas ini.
Dengan perubahan cuaca yang ekstrim di mana-mana.
Polusi merajalela dan membunuh puluhan juta orang.
Hujan deras dan banjir di mana-mana.
Gunung es di Antartika terus mencair.
Air laut akan naik setinggi 1 meter.
Sumber air dunia akan berkurang dengan sangat drastis.
Banyak pulau yang akan tenggelam.
Semakin banyak spesies punah yang disebut the sixth extinction.
Keragaman hayati akan rusak, suhu air laut yang naik, ekosistem laut yang terancam, serta terumbu karang yang banyak mati.
Penyakit semakin banyak menyebar, termasuk malaria.
Stok pangan menurun banyak dan kekeringan di mana-mana.
Banyak tanah yang akan menjadi padang pasir tandus.
Dan konflik berbasis lingkungan yang meningkat juga secara drastis.
Semua ini akibat ulah manusia.
Namun, malapetaka ini dapat juga dicegah oleh manusia.
Karena itulah, ayo kita selamatkan Indonesia dari bumi panas.
Mari kita mulai mengurangi emisi gas rumah kaca Indonesia.
Ayo kita kurangi emisi gas rumah kaca 50% di tahun 2030.
Dan kita kurangi terus sampai akhirnya kita bisa mencapai 0 emisi di tahun 2050.
Ayo hijaukan ekonomi kita, jaga hutan kita.
Jaga ekosistem laut kita.
Kembangkan energi bersih dan kurangi segala emisi karbon dalam kehidupan kita.
Sehingga Indonesia Emas 2045 akan hidup dalam bumi yang nyaman, sehat, dan bahagia.
Sehingga Indonesia dapat menjadi bagian penting dalam solusi global perubahan iklim.
Planet bumi harus kita sembuhkan dari sekarang.
Target besar dan mulia ini bisa kita capai.
Ayo kita bergotong royong.
Selamatkan planet bumi.
Selamatkan umat manusia.
Selamatkan generasi kita dan generasi seterusnya.
Kita sambut Indonesia Emas yang penuh harapan.
Selamatkan Indonesia 2045.
Sadarkah Anda, kita mungkin adalah generasi terakhir yang bisa hidup dalam dunia bercuaca normal. Kita juga adalah satu-satunya generasi yang bisa menyelamatkan umat manusia dari bahaya bumi mendidih yang menanti kita selamanya di depan. Ayo kita penuhi panggilan planet bumi, panggilan umat manusia, dan panggilan sejarah. Ayo sebarkan pesan ini dan tanda tangani petisi.